So you just wrapped up your talk talking about listening to your gut.
Yes.
Right? How do you know when it's your gut talking to you, or fear talking to you, or hubris talking to you, or calamity talking to you?
It's all kind of the same thing. I think I always find that it's about stripping away as much of the exterior messages as you can, just for a moment. You have to listen to all the inputs, right? That's
Yeah.
how you get to the truth and authenticity. That's what the beauty of diversity. But there's a moment when you have to shut all of that out, and you have to really just listen to yourself and be like, what is my like inner soul being mind? Like, what is it really telling me? And I think when you do that, you know if something is the right choice or not. It's it's kind of like learning how to meditate. You know?
How do you sharpen that skill? Because that's not an innate thing to do, right?
No, I don't think I even really learned it until I was in Shanghai, you know, because everything was so foreign. You kind of had to like find something to grab onto.
Yeah.
And it was probably there where I started to realize. And also, my boss, Omar, who you know very well, he was my boss at Beats. He used to always say, Jay, if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. And I'd spent a whole career being conditioned to like, but the marketing plan says this, and we have to do that, and we have to do that. And Omar would be like, Jay, if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. And I learned like when things feel great, they're usually popular. Right. When things feel like, we kind of forced it, or we kind of did this, then like you guys don't respond.
And that's a really scary thing to do, right? When it feels right to you, not knowing what people are going to respond to. There's a lot of.
It's terrifying. Putting work in the world is terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are ridiculously accomplished, and I say that like mildly. How did you get here? Like, where did this happen?
Thank you.
I mean, it's okay. You can stunt a little bit. It's all good. But no, like, would you always thought you were going to be where you are now?
I always wanted to get to Nike.
Yep.
You know, I was 12 years old. I was an athlete, but I watched those commercials not as an athlete. I like studied the commercials. I knew the camera angles. I knew the joke. I knew Bono's bow. I knew Charles Barkley. I just understood them.
What was the first spot that you were like, yo, that's the thing?
Maybe I'm Not a Role Model.
Charles Barkley, yeah.
Yeah. Gorilla Tennis, when Sampras and Agassi started playing in New York City. If You Let Me Play, which was about Title IX and a lot of women, you know, it was a shot by all these young girls saying, if you let me play, I'm less likely to be abused, I'm less likely this. And it was about getting female sports at the same ratio to male sports in universities, because Title IX was expiring.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't even know all that when I was 12, but
it was super cool.
We should let them play.
Yeah, right. Makes all the sense in the world. So you see these spots and you're like, man, I want to do that. So what'd you go to school studying?
I wanted to be a copywriter because I figured I was like the person that just writes the thing. You know?
Yeah.
And I got to school, I went to Georgetown, and I was an English and psych major my freshman year. I was terrible at both. It was like, oh, this is probably not how you do this. I transferred into the business school my sophomore year and found like marketing. And I was like, oh, like this is that. And I loved it. And then I found an advertising concentration as a senior or a junior, I forget. And that's when I loved it. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this forever.
So you came out of Georgetown and went straight to Saatchi, right?
Straight to Saatchi, New York. Everybody said, if you wanna have a job forever, go learn packaged goods marketing.
Right, CPG.
Yeah, CPG. So I went and Saatchi had a great training program, and they had all packaged goods clients. Yeah. So it actually wasn't the job I wanted. I went as a media planner, but I wanted to be an account guy. But I was like, take the training and take these clients.
Yeah.
So my first 5 years, I got to work on Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, and just across all of their products. You know, baby care, home care, Reynolds Wrap.
How prepared did you feel for the gig at Saatchi?
Well, you know what? It was the training program, because it started like right when you got there.
Got it.
And it was brutal. It was you were not allowed to work on it during the day. So you worked nights till 12 or 1. You worked every Saturday and Sunday until you presented a real case study to a real client. 6 weeks later, 8 weeks later.
Yeah.
Once you got through that, you were like, I think I want to work in advertising. Because you got a sense of what you're going to do as a senior executive because you're making all the decisions you're going to make for the next 10, 15, 20 years, whatever.
Yeah.
So go where there's a great training program.
Which is really good. This is really great advice. So out of all the things that you've done, from being at Saatchi, going to BBDO, and then finding yourself at Wyden, Portland to Shanghai, back to Portland, back to Shanghai, and then over to LA, and now set up shop in LA, what's the thing that you're most proud of?
I would say, can I tell 2 more stories?
Oh, please.
No. I think the thing I'm probably most proud of is probably the Liu Sheng story.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a national hero, and he was heartbroken. His family was heartbroken. His coach was heartbroken, and that was going to change his narrative in this country and in that country, and for us to be able to be there and just nail the sentiment that you literally, the second it hit, you saw the change in social media. That was something, because you're helping someone's life,
Yeah, you're talking about cultural impact.
Yeah.
It's massive.
And then I think the other one, which is I could have put in here, was, so when Conor McGregor was fighting Mayweather, Jimmy Iovine was like, sign Conor McGregor. And I was like, Jimmy, he's so expensive. He's like, sign Conor McGregor. So we and there's a great story about how we signed Conor McGregor that I'll tell you another time. But
Good over drinks.
exactly. So we signed Conor, but it was interesting. Like, as Conor's going to fight Floyd Mayweather, I was watching the sentiment on social from all of our athletes who are predominantly black, and they were all like, Floyd. Right? So I was like, okay, this is weird. Like, none of our athletes are rooting for our athlete. And normally, like, everybody's down for everybody. Serena supports LeBron supports Cam, And I was like, this is weird. And then I saw this idea. Which was telling the story of Conor McGregor coming from the hood of Ireland, because he is from the hood of Ireland. And they put Juicy on it. It was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine. Like, that is like the anthem of being from the hood, right?
That's Notorious B.I.G.
Notorious B.I.G.
Just make sure everybody knows.
Google it. I mean, it's the anthem of being from the hood.
Yeah, totally.
And I was like, are you allowed to put that on a white guy's story? And I called Steve Stout.
Yeah.
Your old boss.
Yeah.
I called Steve Stout. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was like, Stout, you're the only person on the planet that can give me the confidence to make this decision. And I was like, I want to put Biggie on a Conor film. And this is when Conor had said a couple things about black women. Like, it was rough at that moment, right? And I wasn't going to do it. I didn't have the confidence to do it. And Stout was like, Jay, he's like, you put that track on that piece of film. And he said, you do that because he's from the hood, just like anybody else is from the hood. And he had to do what he had to do. And he's the come up, just like any black kid in the hood. That's the come up story. You put the come up anthem on there, you own that, you do it. And we did it, and it was hugely successful. Like, people were like, wow. So,
I mean, in both of those cases, these are just like human stories that we're telling here. Like, so when you were going through the training at Saatchi, even your time in school, like, how did you learn that skill, being able to tell stories that are human in nature despite the product category?
I think I personally have always been an empath, and Wyden is where I learned storytelling.
Yeah, say more.
There's such a humanity in the building, like Wyden. We're rarely looking for. Yes, we want to know the product benefit. Yes, we need to know all the things we have to sell, but like, that's rarely it, like, they say much bigger things. We always talk about the simple human truth, like, that's way bigger than a product. That's way bigger than a product benefit or an efficacy story. The simple human truth, that's why, like, with Select Better, we said, like, the relentless pursuit of progress. Like, that guy was trying to help his homie, and then he buying farms, and then, like, it's just a simple, like, as human beings, we want to progress. We want to move forward. And I think Wyden taught me that, how to distill something to the core of, like, a human emotion, a human feeling, and then tell that story. And the rest is just icing and coating and wrapping paper.
So if we were telling the human story of Jason White, what's that story?
I would say one, I tell my team all the time, I'm a high school football player. You know, I learned code. I learned look to your left, look to your right. These are your brothers. I learned if everyone doesn't do their job, someone's gonna get hurt today. You know, sacrifice, hard work, all of that. And I had my father is, you know, the most important male in my life, and which was hard for me. Growing up as a black kid, I was like, oh, I'm the one with the dad. Like I was so guilty about that. And I've always wanted to find a way to make sure that the blessing that I got was something I could figure out how to pay forward.
Yeah.
And I think even now what we're doing in the social justice space with cannabis and like trying to like expunge records and reunite families and like give people second chances, like all of that comes from me carrying what was a burden, and now I think something very powerful, which is the gift my dad gave me of being there.
I mean, to me, when I think about the disruption that is happening with the legalization of cannabis in the United States, and not in all states, but broadly speaking, you know, I think about the impact isn't just the commercial aspect, which is big, and there's a lot of opportunity there, but it's about undoing so many wrongs that really disrupted neighborhoods,
100%.
generational
This is,
impact.
when I say I was the one with the dad, I don't mean it because like these were bad dads. I mean the war on drugs just ruined families and communities and neighborhoods. Like absolutely ruined them.
For generations.
Absolutely. So for me, it was like to be able to now be a part of fixing that is you know, I don't miss Apple. I loved my time there. But
I loved Apple too. Apple was great.
you know, but you know, 10 days ago, we expunged 405 cases for 173 people. That's 173 people that can now go like get a job they couldn't get the day before.
That is unreal, right? And to me, you know, here at Ross, we talk a lot about that good business builds a better world, right? Better business for a better world. And when I think about the opportunities, much like you just mentioned, like that's the kind of work that we should be thinking about here. Like that's the disruptive nature of business, not just the commercial side of it, but the community side as well. So with that, you know, what's the thing that you regret the most?
So when I got promoted to come home from China the first time to be the global Nike lead, I remember the guy who had the job, who was moving over to run another piece of business to make room for me to come back. He said to me, "Can I just give you a piece of advice?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "Your highs are too high and your lows are too low." He said, "If you're gonna be a leader, you gotta stay more in the middle." And I kind of thought, like, that's me, that's my brand. Like, my highs are high, my lows are low. Like, that's how I motivate people.
I'm just emo, man. What are you gonna do? This is who I am.
I'm an empath. And that at Wyden, that worked.
Yeah.
At Beats, I think it wasn't my best work as a leader. And I look back on the time I spent at Beats, and I think I wish I had taken more of that advice. You know, it was a culture that was very volatile. It was a culture that like the wins were extreme and the losses were brutal. And I think that took a toll on people. And you know, hopefully these guys will attest that like my number one pursuit at Select is leadership and like just, you know, cool to the other side of the pillow and like push this group forward, inspire this group, lead from the front, and bring everybody with you.
Nice. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
It's kind of corny, but it's like, it's so true. Like, be yourself. Like, let that come out, you know? Like, I grew up in very different communities. I grew up in very black communities, very white communities. I've always been like playing in weird different identities. I wasn't black enough, wasn't white enough, wasn't Cuban enough, I'm half Cuban, like all these different things. And I think I'm finally like 43 years old, and
You don't look it.
thank you.
You don't look it at all.
And I bring all of me to work every day, and I've never been happier.
I tweeted this a couple weeks ago, is that to the same effect, I felt like I spent my entire life trying to fit in until I was brave enough to stand out. And in that moment, I just realized that like life is so much better on this side, but it takes a tremendous amount of courage to do that very thing.
And I think for me, I think I learned in my probably 20s was like, because I had run in all these different groups, I was actually maybe my role was to maybe connect some of these groups. Maybe
Yeah.
my role was to be the glue and not try to be this one or that one or
Yeah.
that one. But it's a lifelong journey, identity and being your authentic self.
Okay, last question before we open this up to your students. If you were giving one bit of advice to this bright group of potential leaders, potential disruptors, what's the one piece of advice you'd give them?
I'm gonna repeat what we talked about earlier.
Please do.
Have a point of view. There's just too many people that come into this space and don't have a point of view. And I say this space meaning adulthood, working, careers. You have to have a point of view. You have to have done the work, you have to have done the research, and you gotta have a point of view. Because if you don't have a point of view, you disappear and you're not useful. So have a point of view. It doesn't mean use it all the time, but have a point of view. Like stand for something.
Awesome. All right, let's open this up. I'm sure you got tons of questions. Margaret, help us with the microphones over here. So we open this up to the audience. Jason White is here to impart some wisdom on us. So Jason, this is you have the class. These are your students.
By all means, let's jump in. Hi.
Let's get a mic to you so we can get you audible.
Hi. First off, I've been moved today. Thank you so much for coming up here and sharing your story.
Thank you.
I guess it's been a few years since you've been in advertising, but over the past few years, the industry is going through a few changes. There are multi-agency models that some companies are going with, some blend of like in-house creatives and external creatives like Saatchi and P&G is doing this. As the structure of the advertising industry is changing, do you think the heart and soul of the industry is changing with it?
100%. I think advertising's in trouble. And I think it will reform and rediscover itself and rise again. But I think there are very few left that and I can only just speak very personally from my own perspective. Like there are very few agencies that I would call that I want their point of view. Because I think it's just become these rotating doors of like people, I work this shop, I work at that shop, I work at that shop, and then they all say the same thing, and like and again, to me, that's about the point of view. Like that's why I love Wieden & Kennedy. Wieden & Kennedy has a very clear point of view, and they will fire you as a client if it's not within their interests as an agency. And it doesn't mean their interests are selfish or not client-driven, but they just understand who they are and they understand what they stand for, and they will walk away if that's not in alignment. And now, too many agencies need the money, need the margin, have to keep paying for all their employees or paying for these buildings they shouldn't even be in. And I think the industry's in trouble. And I think the way media has broken off and sells all these proprietary tools is all bullshit.
Hi. Again, I want to thank you for coming out today. Everything you've talked about was just amazing to hear. But I believe I heard you say something when you guys first started talking. I heard you say that putting your work out there into the world can be terrifying. And that's something I feel a lot when I'm creating something and I want to put something out. I feel like there's a big barrier with getting past like the fear of putting something out there. How did you learn to get over that, and how do you basically convince yourself that what you're making is good enough to put out?
You never get over it, but it's like, how do you harness it, right? How do you use fear as a tailwind? I mean, like at Beats, we did big launches, and it was moments. We were all about moments. So it was when Richard Sherman's walking the tunnel, pushed the spot, and spiked talent, everybody pushed. Like, we used to have what was called the minute by minute. So you would literally know at this minute LeBron's pushing, at this minute Serena's pushing, at this minute the brand's gonna push, at this minute ESPN's gonna retweet. Like it was to the minute. And it was usually like 6 a.m. on Sunday because that would be 9 a.m. on the East Coast, and that was when Sunday football was happening. Like it was like super calculated. And I never got over that. Just the butterflies of like when you push it out, you're like refresh, and then you start seeing the numbers, and you start seeing the comments, and you're like, okay, right, they like that. You never get over it, like even when we just launched the Select piece in October, you're terrified. What if I made a mistake? What if it's to this or if it's to that, you know? So I don't think you're ever gonna get over it. I think there's kind of a way now, like I kind of like feed on it now though, you know? I'm kind of like, oh, this is scary. Like, let's go, let's do this, you know? and I think that's kind of what you wanna do is like, one, it makes you sharper, right? Because you'll look at something again, look at it again, look at it again, look at it again, like tweak it. Okay, is it ready? Is it ready? No, no, no. Like really, like you get it to a place where you're like, okay, I'm gonna put this in the world now. And you just kind of obsess the details. But then, and then it's you gotta learn how to make that moment exciting, not scary. And there's a fine line between exciting and scary. It's like, you know, jumping off a bungee jump or something, you know.
It's very much like a roller coaster. It's
Yes.
like tick, 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 tick. Like, why the hell am I on this thing? Why did I do this? This is the stupidest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
I forgot this. Oh my gosh, it's amazing!
Yeah.
It's like, let's play it again. Let's do it again. This is great.
When LeBron went back to Cleveland, we told this beautiful story of him going home that had "Take Me to Church" on it. And I remember I was with the agency. We were in. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning, and we were finishing the spot. And we were still tweaking, and the woman who was running the post-production house came in. She said, "If you don't lock this cut right now, you're gonna miss your air date." And we were like, "Okay, I think it's done." And then we pushed it out, and it was, you know, like 16 million views or something crazy. Like it was a beautiful thing. It was awesome.
Again, thank you so much for this conversation. You talked a lot about telling those human and kind of raw stories. So my question is, would you ever use the Select brand to tell the story of those families that are being reunited throughout the commercialization of the cannabis industry? And if so, when and in what context?
It's funny you say that. So we just did this expungement clinic in Baltimore last Friday, and we did it at a community center that was, and I didn't know this until we got there, right? This community center was about to be shut down, and there was a woman named Kim Trueheart who had come home from the Navy. She'd retired, and she was on her what's it called in your government? Pension.
There you go. It's like, where
So
you
she
go
was,
with this
she
one?
was happy, right? She was chilling. And she saw in her community, like this community center was gonna close. So she put her own money to keep this thing open. She's now the executive director of it. And we went there and did the expungement clinic. And I was spending a lot of time with her just to understand, like, you know, to really feel like what we were doing there. And the more and more I heard her story, saw the story of what that community center meant for her to keep that open, and then what it meant for us to come there and give these people like second chances. I literally yesterday called our PR person down there, and I said, what if we make a documentary about this place? What if, because we're gonna go back in August and do another one, what if we tell the story of from that first one to that last one, and we follow the lives of the people that came through there and what changed for them, and also we put some money into making sure that community center never gets in that situation again. So we haven't aligned on this yet, but it was an idea that since the day I walked out of there, it's just been like sitting in my head, and I think we are gonna go do that and make that a piece of content that people can see the effects on people's lives.
Next.
Again, thank you so much for today. I really enjoyed hearing about how your core values led you to taking big risks that paid off, and that's where your best stories come from. Do you have any stories from where taking a big risk didn't pay off significantly?
I know I have examples when it costs us a lot of money. It's like painful to relive. So, two quick ones. So we were shooting for the Olympics, and we were in Beijing, right? And we were on the grounds where the athletes practice. And as my creative director and I, we were walking around, and like this, like, you know, 7-foot person walks by, and then like all these like runners go by, and then and we were like, this is cool. This is like actually, like, what if this was a place that we told an advertising story about, and we call it the City of Gold, and it was like where all these people are like getting ready for their gold medals and all this stuff.
That's cool.
And we made that, and we told a lot of people to trust us because we were like, we got this. This is going to be great. But we chose the wrong director. We chose a director that didn't understand sport. We chose a director that didn't understand like humanity, and he made this like hokey piece, and we saw the first rough cut, and we were like, fuck, we don't have it. And it was like $3 million. So I called the Nike client, and I was like, I got good news, I got bad news. Luckily, we were also making a documentary. It's always the human stories. Tell the human stories. We were also making a documentary about this guy who was a high jumper, right? He was a high jumper in the '84 Olympics in LA. He was the world record holder. And this is the first time China went back to the Olympics since 1920 something, right? They'd gone through the Cultural Revolution, all this shit. And he's there, and he had silver guaranteed, and he went for gold. And in going for gold, he took bronze because he got beat. And he was shunned in China. He was shunned in China from 1984, and it was now 2008. And he had gone on to have a successful career and stuff, but it was like a blemish on his role in society. And we were shooting that and telling that story as well. And we were looking at those rough cuts and those edits, and it was a beautiful story of like how 30 years ago, people saw that as failure.
Yeah.
But today, we see that as just do it.
Yeah.
You go for it. You go for the goal, man. Of course. Just go for it. So we retold his story through the lens of what it meant to like, even though you could have guaranteed silver, you went for gold. Good for you. And we changed his life. We did a whole huge documentary debut. He was crying, his kids were there. He said, thank you for like rewriting my story. Yeah. So we were making that at the same time. So I called our client and I was like, I got good news, I got bad news. Like,
It's a switcheroo
yeah,
for you.
I was like, the bad news is I still don't have a rough cut. The good news is I'm going to Berlin to finish this other thing, and we're gonna make that the campaign, and it ended up being very successful. But that was a big miss, and we didn't make the right decisions on the way, and it cost us a lot of money and a lot of time.
Again, thank you for coming. You've had a very dynamic career. It seems like you've had experiences in advertising firms, in startups, and in established companies. Can you talk to some of the pros and cons of being in each of those scenarios, and which one you found the most enjoyable or liked the best?
I have this weird theory I kind of live by where I always ask myself, are you teaching or learning? And I think in every role you take, you gotta know which one you're really doing. And there's always a little bit of both going on, but I do really ask myself, like, what phase am I in right now? Am I teaching or am I learning? And for me, that defines the role, and that defines the thing I take next. Like Beats by Dre, while I was the boss, I was learning the entire time I was there. I was learning the music business. I was learning like how to be as cool as Dr. Dre. I was fake it till you make it. You know what I mean? And I felt like I had done so much learning in those 5 years that I was just almost like starting to get bitter about it. And I was like, I'm ready to go teach. I'm ready to go lead. I'm ready to like switch it up. And that's how you end up going all the way into, white space like cannabis, because you feel like you have so much to give now. You've got so much inside of you. So I don't really think of it so much as like a startup or this or that. I think it was like, what do you want to do next with your career, and where are you as a human being and as an individual? I think what I can say is there's tremendous lessons you can take from all of them. Like Apple's the biggest, depending on the day, like biggest company in the world, and you see like just impeccable execution, impeccable things like supply chain management, all the way to like making the right decisions for the right reasons, not cutting corners, like incredible, right? But then you go and you're number 17 at an agency in China, and you learn how to hustle. Like you learn how to cut every corner you can. So there's so much value in each step. And I didn't architect it that way, but I'm very glad I went kind of in and out of those processes, because there's a tremendous amount you can learn from either aspect.
Cool, let's do two more.
Hi. Throughout the stories that you told, I could hear the progression of technology through marketing. And I just want to know how you thought the advancement of technology really affected your marketing experiences.
That's a great question. It's so prevalent, and you don't have a choice, right? And also, like, even China, like, I was there with the explosion of WeChat and the explosion of Weibo, which is like Twitter. And to watch China come of age and just like take these platforms, you know, like Facebook, Google, you know, all these platforms and just go make the Chinese version and then put the wall up. And it was like, whoa, you know. But I think what technology did was it always shaped the way you can express and the way you can tip culture and the way, like when we used to launch campaigns pre-Instagram, or at least like when Instagram was small, we could do Twitter, you could retweet, right? So we would put a 30-second spot on Twitter and then get every athlete and every musician to retweet it, and all of a sudden it was everywhere. Then you get to Instagram, and like there's no retweeting on Instagram. We're like, shit. So you've got to kind of rethink, and that's when you saw content start to change, right? Because now, one, you can't just put a commercial on Instagram, right? That's people's like, you know, that's their window display area. You know, it's just gonna be tight there.
Highly curated.
Yeah. And then in addition to that, with Instagram, what we found was like people started to learn the value of, you know, their page. And so people were like, I'm not posting that for free. Like, so you watched all this happen while you're navigating how to communicate and how to tie into cultural moments and stuff. So, and then you also saw everything get super fragmented, right? Because like I can now put up my little walls and I only see things that I want to see, and you know, the algorithm is, you know, my little world. So you constantly have to reinvent and understand what's changing, because it will absolutely define your ability to reach people and to touch people and to scale. That's the really big part. It's like, how do you scale now?
And the interesting part is that despite the changes in the media landscape, it's always been about human stories from the very beginning.
100%, and that's a great point. The rest is just details of like how you connect.
Right.
But it's still the thing that move people are like simple human truths.
Right.
The thing that move people are the hero's journey. You know, it's the rise, the fall, and the recovery. You know, that's
The plumbing may change, how it gets there may change.
Believe in that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's powerful. All right, one last one. Who got it? There we go.
As everyone said, obviously, thank you for coming tonight. You obviously got a chance to tell a lot of stories during your career. Is there a story that you saw put out there that maybe you wish you got to tell, or is there, you know, a story that you thought was not as well done that you saw like an avenue that you could have delivered that story in a better way?
Yes. We were first on Kaepernick, but my wings were a little bit clipped, and I didn't get to do what I thought was right around Cap. And that was holiday. So Cap, the big moment was that summer, right? July, whenever that happened. Yep. The previous December, we were on that. And we had a great story to tell. We put a piece of film out that alluded to it. It was this kid wearing a number 7 jersey, and the wind and the turmoil, he's like on the San Francisco streets, it like really kind of whips up and he like falls down to his knees, and he's wearing the number 7 jersey, so he's like on a knee and stuff. But we were scared of blowback. Cause Apple, you know, like Apple's like red state, blue state, whatever, right?
Right.
And we didn't PR it the right way. We didn't push it out as like, this is our point of view. It was a beautiful film. Like it addressed what was going on with Me Too. It addressed what was going on with Cap. Like I'm so proud of that film. And we didn't finish the mission. And that's one of my biggest regrets, because I think a lot of people put a lot of hard work into that, and we got scared at the end, and we didn't go all the way.
Thank you so much, Jason White. Please help me. Thank you for being with us.